I've got nobody to blame but myself. Nobody. I spent time doing things that I shouldn't. I didn't spend time doing that I should. I got distracted creating something stupid that had no point or purpose whatsoever, but it just felt like I needed to do it instead of creating the things that I knew needed to happen. So when you're coaching individuals, like, do you see common distractions that people will find themselves committing a lot of time to that are preventing them from budgets, job performance, financial impact, physical fitness? Do you see like regular things on your side of things?
Yeah, I would say it's two different things. So the easy one is the phone, right? Obviously, this thing is perfectly calibrated to do exactly what society wants it to do, right? It is built to give us the right amount of dopamine squirts at the right time. It knows when you have not, been on in 5 minutes. It will shoot you some notifications. So you go and check this thing. Like, they've got this down to a science, and we are just the labs, the rat in the lab, basically.
Yep, so true.
That's the easy one. But this is what I would say. People know that. They do. Nobody, I'm not saying like, hey, guess what? You're spending too much time probably on your phone, and nobody's out here going, oh my gosh, like I never knew that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I don't like to pick on the phone too much, even though it is the most obvious one. Now, I will say this is the thing that people are not aware, and I do highly recommend. When people come in, I did this just recently with a person, and they were considering joining my mastermind. But the big thing that they said is that, they were like asking what the time commitment was. And they said, Steven, I'm busy. I just don't have the time. And I'm like, well, that's exactly why you need to be in my mastermind, because that's one of the things we solve for. And they're like, right, but I don't have the time to get to that time. And I said, okay, I'll believe you if you do one thing. And they said, okay, what's that? I said, pull up your phone. Okay, pulled up the phone. Said, scroll over, go to settings. And if you have an Android, on Apple phones, it is settings and screen time. On an Android phone, you can look this up. It is settings, and I think it's called digital well-being. There. So they both have this. You go, it will show you exactly how much screen time you are spending on specific apps along with the categories of the apps. I say go back to last week's view, so you get the view of an entire week. And as long as that was a relatively normal week in your life, if you're on vacation, then go to the week before or something. But as long as that was a normal week for you, look at the gaming categories, the entertainment categories, and the social media categories. Add up over a week all of those hours that you spent on those apps. Then tell me if that's at zero. If it's not, then you have time.
Yeah.
Simple as that. So that's something I encourage everybody to do, because I kid you not, I did that with one of my members last week. You know how many hours this super busy entrepreneur with 4 kids and a family and all this other stuff, who had no time in his life and doing all these other things, you know how much time he was spending on those 4 categories combined in a week?
A week, 8 hours.
29 hours. 9. And I'm like, you want to know why you don't have time to go out and get more business? You want it? Well, I mean, a lot of that's on the toilet. Well, then, dude, you need to change your diet, okay?
Yeah,
if it's that much on the toilet. You ain't on the toilet for 29 hours. Well, I mean, it's also when I'm going to bed and stuff like that. Well, guess what? You're always tired, and maybe you could be sleeping better. Then you'll be more efficient in the day. It all ties together, right?
Yeah.
So the phone's the easy one, but I'm going to give you the hard one that a lot of people tend not to do. And I have a feeling this may have been one of the problems that you had as well. There is a category that the ultimate problem that I solve for with people in their life, whether it's regarding their business or, in their personal lives, is I help them deal with distractions. The phone is an easy one. That's a low-hanging fruit, okay? The harder, more difficult distractions are what I call good distractions. And these are things that are actually beneficial. At the top, looking at the top layer of your life, you would go, these are not bad things. I'll give you a perfect example in my life. A couple of years ago, I had been asked to volunteer for a nonprofit and be on the board and be the treasurer. I said, sure, happy to do it, happy to help. It was a great cause. It's getting books to underprivileged children to help them read and get their reading, skills up, all this other stuff. Like, who can't be behind that? The networking, I was going to network with some pretty high profile people. It was like, yeah, sure. They said it'd take about an hour a week. I was probably doing about 3 to 4 hours a week with it. Wouldn't have been that big of a deal, but I just had my first kid. So I've got a son there. got promoted, starting a new element of my job, working on some other things on the side, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden, I'm looking at my life just going, feel like I'm not getting any traction towards my goals. And I can't figure out why, because I am swamped. I'm working my ass off. And that's when this concept really hit me. I went and I read this book, Essentialism by Greg McKeown. I highly recommend it. Top 5 book of the decade for me. And on it, he has a circle on the cover with arrows pointing in all different directions, right? And I just did I went to my whiteboard, I wrote out a circle, I wrote me in the center, and then I just wrote all the things that I was doing and I pointed them in different directions. And what happens is when you're doing a ton of things that aren't correlated to a singular goal, it's like, just like physics, right? You're being pulled in all the directions, but that circle's not really going anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, when I eliminated a lot of those circles and said, what are my goals? What is it I am trying to accomplish? And then I cut off everything that wasn't involved with that. I got those 4 hours back when I quit the nonprofit board, right? Well, all of a sudden, those arrows started all converging one way, and that moves you up. So sorry for those of you that are just listening to this if you can't see that, but it's it's basically just saying, are you trimming the fat on your time and your energy, not just your money, and then investing that in the things that move you towards your goals? Those good distractions are the things that really get us. It might be a passion project that has nothing to do with us and what we're trying to accomplish, right? Those are the harder ones that we have to really identify. So I would say those two would be the big things. And when it comes to the money stuff, honestly, there's nothing getting in the way of somebody doing a budget as far as time or energy or anything like that. That's all emotional 100% of the time.
Yeah.
People don't want to deal with the shame, the guilt, and the fear that they have in their head of just looking at their financial situation. And normally people think it's worse than it actually is.
Yeah. No, it's so good. Yeah. I've got so many stories on time management and learning the hard way myself. And I read a book forever ago that I just reread. I reread pretty regularly, called First Things First by Stephen Covey. And I think that, I think along the same lines to what you're speaking about, when we don't have a good understanding, and I think really comes back to the root of a lot of what we started. Like, if you don't have a good understanding of who you are, if you don't have a good understanding of what you're called to, then there's an infinite number of good things that we can do with our time, with ourselves, with our gifts, with our talents. And it becomes really difficult to determine what's actually beneficial or not. Because again, like, somebody's going to hear you say, well, I quit the nonprofit board, and they're thinking to themselves, man, Steven's a jerk. Of all the things he gave up the nonprofit. Like, how horrible is that? But we need to understand who we're called to be and what we're called to do in order to prioritize our time effectively. I was on a call with some salespeople this morning. I host a group coaching for a group of salespeople, and I was talking about their time management, interestingly enough, and saying that, look, you don't just allocate time to prospecting new business because you're in sales. You allocate time to prospecting new business because you believe that you need to dedicate that time in order to achieve the goals that you believe you've been called to achieve.
Right.
And I said, if you have a role that is distracting you from doing that, you either need to change your role or you need to change the allocation of the time to achieve a different goal. And I think people just have such a hard time with that. Again, there's this confusion around, well, if it feels good, I should do it.